fig tree down. It's not bearing any fruit.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach. Disgrazia.
They will not allow Donald Trump to be president. This is the twisted mind of the left. You're putting a Band-Aid over a problem that's not being addressed. It's thrown around too liberally, hate speech. Just because your feelings are hurt doesn't mean it's hate speech. So there are issues here that cross political lines.
It means that your libtard friends are not going to invite you over for Grey Goose and Pogwa.
If you think that America is about you, you're just fool.
I got to show you something that has me aggravated. Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. Sunday night in the big city, Joe Resinello. Let us go into the breach. Man, I'll tell you something, Joe. Joe, all of you out there at the Frontline with Joe and Joe know that we're building up our Twitter account. So I've been focusing on Twitter with some short videos and pertinent videos, things that are in the news, because that's what Joe and I do. We hop on and we want our commentary. We're throwing our commentary into the ring. Because that's what we're all about. So at with Joe and Joe on Twitter, at with Joe and Joe. Joe's doing a lot as far as exposing the hypocrisy of and the insanity of Justin Trudeau up in Canada. And make no mistake about it, in doing so, remember, what's going on in Canada is simply reflected in the United States and vice versa. So any commentary on Justin Trudeau also is commentary on the left here in America. It's the same thing. The thing is this, though. Dear Joe, it's almost like somebody's showering you with a banquet, and you just don't know what to eat first. I'm being totally serious. I mean, whether you're talking about Sam Smith and this poor soul, Joe, I mean, again, I'm not going to pick on the guy. I'm not, because Sam Smith is a lost soul. You can see my video on that on Twitter if you go to Twitter, because it's the truth. Joe, he embarrassed himself the other day on the stage. You got parents taking their 5- and 6-year-olds to see this guy embarrassing himself on a stage with no shirt on. He's fat. Joe, I'm fat, so I'm not criticizing him being overweight, okay? The point is this, though. It's so hard to choose what to talk about, all right? But nonetheless, we found a few things for you. Things that might have a little bit more immediacy for us. Okay, it's great to talk about Sam Smith. It's great to talk about some of these more culture war issues. But we want to talk about tonight. We have a really good conversation about, we're going to talk about other things, but two people in particular, Elon Musk and Ron DeSantis. And we're going to break that down a little bit. But I want to start, Joe, if you don't mind. I want to start with Elon Musk, because I'll tell you something, Joe. Obviously, the guy's been under constant attack since he bought Twitter. We all know that. You're a blind man, or you're delusional not to see that this man, if they could kill him the same way they plan on killing Donald Trump when Donald Trump gets elected president, they would put a bullet in Elon Musk's head. There's no question about it. He is the most hated man, number 2 to Donald Trump, because he had the audacity to take away a portion of their social media monopoly that they had. But what's great about him is, Joe, usually you ever be in a situation where you catch somebody in a lie, but you kind of don't want to call them a liar because you feel bad because, but you know that they damn well lied. Let's play this clip, okay? Because here's Elon Musk with the BBC. And this is why, Joe, I'm increasingly becoming a fan of his. John, roll the clip.
So I'm trying to understand what you mean by hateful content, and I'm asking for specific examples. And you just said that if something is slightly sexist, that's hateful content. Does that mean that it should be banned?
Well, you've asked me whether my feed, whether it's got less or more. I'd say it's got slightly more.
That's why I'm asking for examples. Can you name one example?
I honestly don't use. Honestly, I
don't. You can't name a single example.
I'll tell you why. Because I don't actually use that for you feed anymore. Because I just don't particularly like it.
But you
said actually, a lot of people are quite similar. I only look at
hang on a second.
You
said you've seen more hateful content, but you can't name a single example, not even one.
I'm not sure I've used that feed for the last 3 or 4 weeks. And
then how did you see the hateful content?
Because I've been using Twitter since you've taken it over for the last 6 months.
Okay, so then you must have at some point seen for you hateful content. I'm asking for one example.
Right.
And you can't give a single one.
And I'm saying...
Then I say, sir, that you don't know what you're talking about.
Now, do you see what I'm talking about, Joe Rossinello? That is exactly how you have to speak to these skewed leftist journalists, so-called journalists. He's actually a so-called journalist. That congresswoman, I forgot her name, Plasky or whatever, she called Matt Taibbi and Schellenberger, she called them so-called journalists, and they are real journalists, and they're both liberals. They probably wouldn't agree with you and me on much, Joe, okay? But nonetheless, she called them so-called journalists. This guy is a so-called journalist. Elon Musk called him to the carpet, right to his face, and that clip didn't show it, but it leads up to where he said, you lied. You lied. And the dude didn't know which way to turn. Joe, we need a little bit more of that. It's refreshing, Joe Rossinello, to see the media getting called out by a guy like Elon Musk.
Yeah, I agree with you. I love the way how he was like very pointed and just basically manhandled him in a corner and basically caught him in his bull. But I'll tell you what, I think he did have examples, but he couldn't say them because he would look ridiculous, because their examples are ridiculous. It simply comes down to this. You don't agree with them. And that's the example. It's like what you're calling hate, you don't agree with them. For instance, I'll just give you a simple instance. I believe in traditional marriage. I am a Catholic. Orthodox Jews believe the same thing. So do Muslims. It's a perennial teaching of the three largest religions on the globe. It's pervasive, and it's been around for millennia. I have every right to disagree with you, and I can have a very, I think, linear and educated conversation. And you just calling me a hater based upon that shows, if you ask me, how ignorant you are. Period. But here's the deal. You're free to disagree with me. And that's fine, because we live in a free, quote unquote, country, not according to you. And that is the way I think he had tons of examples, but he knew he would look stupid. And that's why he was afraid to say them. I just gave one of could be a many of them.
But Joe, isn't that the problem at the front line with Joe and Joe? If you're just joining us, please, wherever you're seeing us right now, particularly on social media, click a button that's going to help us. Do us a favor. But Joe, isn't that the whole point? Is that back in the day, let me give you an example. William F. Buckley had Firing Line, okay? Buckley interviewed Noam Chomsky. He interviewed Norman Mailer. He interviewed Alan Dershowitz when Alan Dershowitz was arguing the pornography case in front of the Supreme Court. He interviewed so many people that he disagreed with on political, cultural, and religious questions. Okay, I think that's fairly, I'm making a fair statement. Would you agree with me?
Absolutely.
Okay. None of those people shied away from William F. Buckley and having a conversation with him, and Buckley did not shy away from having them on his show. My larger point is, where have we come? Because this was Firing Line was in our adult lives. In other words, later on, Firing Line, I mean, it started obviously a lot when we were kids. But my point is this, where did that go in America? Because you want to know something? Liberals could click into Firing Line on PBS on Saturday mornings and get what they want out of an interview with William F. Buckley and Noam Chomsky, let's say. And so could conservatives. In other words, I look at, I go back and I go on YouTube and I look up Firing Line videos all the time. The point I'm making, Joe, is that Elon Musk with this man, I will call him a so-called journalist. This guy showed those days are gone. This guy, Joe, like you said, there might be issues. There might be somebody says something that's borderline hateful, okay, on Twitter. He could have given an example, but he chose not to. He chose to start with attacking Elon Musk. And that was his mistake. And my larger point is that, Joe, do you see how things have evolved from when we were kids? It goes from discussion to now there's no discussion. You don't agree with us. You allow these people to spew hateful things. You're public enemy number 2, because Trump's number 1. Elon Musk is number 2. Joe, it's a sad state of affairs when people cannot reason together. It really is. And that's where
But
we're
they don't
at in
have
America.
that. I mean, that just happened in Arizona, your state, with the governor race. She didn't debate. They can't debate.
Right.
Like, they cannot debate because many of their positions are so over the top. There's nothing to debate. You look foolish. If you're going to tell me that you're going to lop off the breasts of a 14-year-old girl with a serious face, I'm going to tear you limb from limb in the discussion. If you're going to seriously tell me that you can abort a child in the 9th month, I could tell you to your face that you are behaving as the Nazis did. You are no longer just for abortion. That is infanticide. So they can't debate. Their ideas, this is no longer political. These ideas are insane. They're insane. They're insane and they're disqualifiers. Their positions, I'll be honest with you, Joe, they're evil. It's evil. I'm sorry, people. It's evil. And to embrace these ideas is evil. It's no longer political. I just named two. I can name a few more.
Right, right.
And that's why, to be honest with you, they can't debate these positions. There's nothing to debate. And when the lie loses its power, you have to censor. You have to do what the
What they are
mainstream,
doing now, yes.
because the lie has lost its power.
But they allow, but the problem is, let's assume, let's just put it out there at the front line with Joe and Joe that you and I will vote and probably will vote Republican, pretty much whoever the nominee is. For myself, with the exception of Nikki Haley and Mike Pence, I'm not voting for either one of them, but I'll probably vote for any other the Republican candidates. Let's assume we're both Republicans. We're going to vote Republican, but our leadership sucks. But do you want to know why, Joe? Because they won't listen to what you just said. They won't see. You'll call it out. The good people that watch us here at the front line with Joe and Joe will call it out. I will call it out. They won't. Ronna McDaniel won't call it out. She won't call out the media and say, why didn't Katie Hobbs debate Carrie Lake? Why? And go on Fox and go on CNN and go on MSNBC. A real leader would be in there fighting and fighting and fighting, saying, no, we're going to point this out. They don't do it, Joe. They don't do it. They're such, you know what? Back in the day, Joe, when you and I first started doing the show, I thought wrongly that you might be a little bit harsh on people in America who are a little bit comfortable. I am now in total agreement with you. People don't want to lose their comfort. The Republican establishment doesn't want to lose its comfort, its money flow, and everything else. There's a lot of people that will continue to support that Republican establishment, and you've proven to me you're exactly right. People don't want to go into the breach. They don't want to take a chance. They don't want to stand up for truth, Joe, even to the point where the call out like Elon Musk just did in this interview to tell the guy, excuse me, give me an example of what you're talking about. You made a statement. Joe, you and I make statements all the time, and I like to think that we back them up with examples, with facts. He said to the guy, gave him an opportunity. He didn't berate him. He gave him an opportunity. He said, give me an example. Well, I'm not on that feed anymore. Yeah, but you just said you're on that feed. So which one is it? And now later in the clip, he says, but you're a liar. Okay. Why do we have to have Elon Musk do that? Why aren't the Republican establishment doing that? Why isn't Fox News, quite frankly, doing that? They're all cowards, is why. And we're all out here fighting. And let me tell you something. When we have a major impact, they're going to be sorry.
Well, I'll tell you, I think because they make money, and they don't want to risk it. And the politicians, they have power and they don't want to risk it. You see, that's why I'll be truthful with you. I back Donald Trump because he's a flawed man. I get it. But he's an outsider. I don't support career politicians because they have, to be honest with you, they're afraid to lose the skin in the game. The idea of a politician should simply be this. I am not interested in Ted Kennedy, nor am I interested in John McCain, those type of guys. You come in because you have a skill set. You believe you have something to offer. And it's basically this. This is where I stand. This is where America should go. It's not where does my opinion fall in the lexicon of American ideas. Let me temper it because I want to kind of get in, and then basically when I'm in, I'm never going to let go. I'm not interested in that guy.
Right.
I'm
Right.
interested in the guy or gal who's basically going to say, listen, I see these problems and these are the solutions. You want to vote for me? Do it. If not, I'm a pretty talented person. I'll get a job
Right.
and I'll be just fine.
Right.
That's who we need. Any of the rest of them, Republican, Democrat, I'll be honest with you, all they're doing, like Mike Pence, not for nothing, he's a politician.
He was better off when he was on the radio.
Oh,
He was Joe. He was better off staying on the radio. You want to
I
know why?
agree.
You know
I
what
agree.
a friend of mine said to me recently, and I think it's very true. He said many people fall into the. By the way, Joe, I'm sorry, I can't resist. I have to mention that Timothy Robertson in the chat room basically told the two of us in the chat room, "F off, you alt-right idiot."
I saw that.
I don't even know. Number one, we like to keep it civil here, Timothy. Number two, I don't know where you get alt-right, dude. We're Roman Catholic. Now you might have a beef with that. We are conservative, authentically conservative. You might have a beef with that. But alt-right, dude, listen, go into the lexicon Joe was talking about, pull out a different word. That one's done. All right. Alt-right you've exhausted that, Timothy. It means nothing. It's like calling somebody a racist nowadays. It means nothing. Joe, my larger point, a friend of mine said to me recently, he goes, a lot of people, he was telling me in the context of a different class of people, but I think it pertains. He said to me, he goes, people get dancing bear syndrome. And I said, well, what is that? I've never quite heard that. He said, well, if you want a bear to do whatever you want, when you can stand the bear up and you can kind of make him move a little bit, you give him a treat. And then when you hold out the treat the next time, the bear will do the same move. And then you do it again and do it again. And now all of a sudden you got a dancing bear. And I believe, I don't want to disparage Mike Pence, but this is what I believe. Knowing something about him as a radio talk show host, when he had some stones, okay, and when he was a member of the House of Representatives, and he had some stones. Joe, as soon as he became governor, he became a dancing bear. And the bottom line is he didn't do anything for conservatives. Obviously, as a vice president, he really didn't. He's shown himself to cave. And I think that's what happens with a lot of them. Ronna McDaniel, the same thing. Ronna McDaniel should not be the head of the Republican National Committee. You know why, Joe? And I'm going to hand it over to you. Because she thinks that it's a boxing match. And what she doesn't realize, it's a bare knuckle brawl that's out in the street with no Marcus of Queensberry rules, with no referee, and it's in the gutter and in the mud. Ronna McDaniel doesn't understand that. Harmeet Dillon did understand that. But the establishment didn't want Harmeet Dillon because she understood that. Why, Joe? My larger point. Because they're all too damned comfortable.
I agree. And you have to be willing to risk your comfort. I'll be truthful with you. You have to be willing to risk it. If we want to move the dial in this country, people have to take a chance. We did, to be honest with you. We put ourselves out there for 5 years and still do.
That's right.
Speak boldly. To be honest with you, I don't even see that in the clergy. And they take, I don't. And we have infinitely more at stake. We have families and
Right.
have been doing it for 5 years. People want to get invited to the barbecue. Many people agree with us on many issues. They won't say it. They frigging, like I said. And then to your point, Joe, when the country, I don't even recognize this country. I'll
Oh,
be honest with you. I look at it like Archbishop Chaput in his book. I'm a stranger in a strange land. I don't even recognize this country at
Right.
all. It's bizarro world, dude, and bizarro world.
Yes, it is.
And and frankly, it's embarrassing. And none of these ideas are going to resonate as far as produce a healthy and civil and safe society. And it's proven to be the case, as is now.
Right.
And yet people will still vote for these people. That's the sickness. Joe, I am beside myself when I see it. And here's another thing. It's evil. What
Yes.
they're doing to people is evil.
Joe, I brought up the example, and I want to make it clear. And I'm not just saying this. Mr. Buzz, by the way, is in the chat room. Joe, Mr. Buzz is awesome. Love you, Mr. Buzz. Um, Joe, when I did that video on Sam Smith, okay, I'm not doing it as a hateful man. I don't care what the left says. I really don't. I don't care about their accusations. I love Sam Smith as a human being. I love him, and the reason why I know I love him, Joe, because I'm embarrassed for him that he gets on a stage and makes a fool out of himself. He's not like, and I made this point the other day on my video on Twitter. He's not like the singer who calls herself Madonna. See, she allowed herself to be used by the oligarchs to attack the integrity of young Catholic women. That's why she became famous. That's how she sold her soul. That was what she needed to do. And she's been a blasphemous woman ever since. Okay. See, and I feel sorry for her too, and I pray for her, and I've told you that, and I've told the audience here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Sam Smith is somewhere else, and the reason why I'm bringing it up is that nobody, Joe, nobody, no conservative on Fox News or in the Republican National Committee, they'll all attack Sam Smith. They'll all say this, that, the other. They point the finger, dude. How about you try to change the effing culture that gave rise to Sam Smith, that changed him from a young. Now again, I understand he was, I believe, homosexual a few years ago when he was a more clean cut singer. Okay, but nonetheless, he was a clean cut guy singing songs, got a good voice. He's morphed into a caricature of a caricature of a caricature. You can't even call him a caricature. My larger point in bringing it up is, Joe, that's the root part of our problem. And you just said it. Our problems are not political. Sam Smith is the manifestation of a spiritual problem in this country, even
Oh,
though
no doubt.
I
No
know
doubt
he's
about it.
English. Okay. Our country is rotten to its core spiritually, not economically, not politically. Those are consequences, Joe. Are
100%
consequences.
agree with you, Joe. And people, I'll be honest with you, they don't care.
Right?
The thing is, they're reaping the negative consequences. Everyone is. We feel it in our paycheck. From the paycheck to basically the public school, none of this is going to produce a healthy group of people. It's not going to. Most of these people, Sam Smith's going to kill himself, Joe. I wouldn't blink an eye.
I
In
think
like,
I'm scared to say I agree with you on that.
and no one will care.
That's right.
It is unbelievable.
Joe, I want to clarify one thing. I'm going to throw it right back to you. You know who will care if he kills himself? You will. I will. The people that are propping him up like a puppet, because that's what he is. He's just flat out being used. Okay. They won't care about him. They will not. You will. I will. I'll pray for his soul. Joe, they won't care. And that's the frustrating part. And we're getting back to Elon Musk. Is that we tell the truth to people, we're called haters. They lie to people, and they're supposedly the most compassionate ones in the room. Okay? We love people. You lie to people. If you lie to people, I love to tell you this. This is the contribution of Christianity to Western civilization. You don't have love without truth. You have a feeling. You have a sentiment. But if you think that that's love, if it is not directly fused with the truth, it's not love. It's just a feeling. And
I tell this to people all the time, Joe. You tell a tree by the fruit it bears. Listen, you may not like me. You may not like what I say, but you tell a tree by the fruit it bears. And it goes the same way for other people.
right.
Look at their lives. They're rotten to the core. They're not, and I'm not talking about financial success.
That's irrelevant. That's irrelevant.
Their lives are in shambles.
Yes.
Because you tell a tree by the fruit it bears. And people are willing to basically ignore that. Like they could see a paradigm that works. And I'll be honest with you, I'll lay that paradigm out for you. Get married, stay married. Have God in your marriage. Work. Pay your bills. basic things, you'll have a good life.
Right.
You will have a good life. I'm not saying they're going to put you on the cover of People magazine. I'm
Who
not
cares if
saying
they do or they don't?
no, but I'm just saying
No,
you'll
I
have
agree
a
with you.
good
Yes.
life. People have basically they think that they have recreated the wheel, and here's what I say to you. Your ideas stink. And they're producing bad results.
That's it. No.
And it's evident. It's evident. I mean, like, I don't know what else to say. And it's sad because I don't know what else to say to people.
Joe, I want to say one thing to you. I want to, and I think I'm saying this correctly, in our audience at the front line with Joe, and Joe would agree. You said that you're not reinventing the wheel. The difference between now and times past is people tried to reinvent the wheel. I think you could appropriately describe it as they reject the existence of the wheel. Do you know where I'm going with that?
Joe, I hear you because it's ludicrous.
The wheel doesn't exist. Well, what is that round thing that ancient people made of stone so they can move things easier? Oh, no, we reject that. It's not what it is. Just like you're not, if you have a penis and you're a male, no, you're actually, you could be whatever you want. Well, no, actually, not according to religion. You don't need religion for this one, fellas. That's what I would tell them. Fellas, you don't need religion, okay? You got something between your legs that says you're a male. Biology says that. Same thing with women. Go, Joe.
No, Joe, and here's another thing. You can't convince them otherwise. It's almost like God is just like, all right, you want to run with this. You're going to run with it as far as it's going to go. The results are going to be devastating to not only the people that are involved, but to society. And it has proven to be so.
Yes.
I go to New York City. In the course of 3 years, I have watched the city fall apart. With my own eyes. I see people smoking crack
Yes.
on the street. Garbage.
Joe, that didn't happen 10 years ago,
No,
Joe.
it didn't happen 4 years
4
ago.
years ago, right.
Rats, garbage on the street. It's a wreck.
Yes.
Your ideas stink. And they won't, Joe, they refuse for whatever reason. I'm not in their head or their heart to acknowledge it. Or they'll acknowledge it and they continue. And I'll be honest with you, you can't help a person that's going to do that in life. Joe, it's like I've said this on this show before. It's like talking to a heroin addict. You're going to die. You do realize this. You're going to die.
Joe, we're going to move on in the conversation, but I'm just going to finalize what you said with this. The difference is those who encouraged that heroin addict, just like those who encouraged Sam Smith, those that encourage all sorts of deviant behavior. When that person, Joe, is dying, those people will not be there for them.
Oh, that's a fact.
You know who will be?
100%.
You know who will be? If we could, and we know there's others that will, you, me,
No,
Christians.
I've said that. The example of the missionaries of charity.
Yep.
All these gay men swinging from poles. When they got AIDS, where were their friends? They were in the hospice in the West Village. The Catholic Church was holding their hand as they were dying.
That's right.
All their friends are gone. And Joe, it's like talking to the wall. I'll be honest with you. And here's the thing. The proof's in the pudding.
Yep.
Your lives are a wreck.
Yep.
And they're a wreck. And your ideas stink.
And when any one of these rich, elite, smug liberals starts to preach to us about we should care about people who are same-sex attracted or who are transgender and all that stuff, when they're dying, open up your $5 million mansion in Connecticut and welcome them into your home with a 24-hour nurse, and you spend the money on them. Until you do that, shut up.
Oh,
because Joe and Joe are not listening to what you're saying. You're with the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Rossinello. We're weighing the breach and we're aggravated now. Okay. So at with Joe and Joe, at with Joe and Joe on Twitter, the Frontline TV on YouTube, and anywhere else you see us, Rumble, Facebook. Please hit something that's going to help us. Now, a finer point on the first part of the conversation, Elon Musk right now, Joe, his capital over the last several months with me has gone way, 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 way up. Why? Because he's handling Twitter the right way. Joe, we haven't been taken down once, nor have I been warned once about anything. And I posted some edgy videos on there. Okay. He's true to form. We have a free market platform, and he calls the media out on their BS. And that was the clip that we played. We encourage you all out there to go see Elon Musk challenging the BBC so-called journalist who said there's so much hate. There's so much hate, Mr. Musk, going on Twitter. And he started to get smug, and Elon put him in his place. Now, Joe, let's pivot a little bit to Ron DeSantis. All right, we talk about politics here. I did a video recently on Trump. I think Trump is the man for the moment. I really do. But politics is politics, Joe. And politicians, and both those guys are politicians. All you Trump supporters out there, he is a politician now, whether you like it or not, and whether he likes it or not. Okay. Ron DeSantis is a politician. All right. So Ron DeSantis is going to push back. Trump, as we know, as one of our friends, Austin Roos, told us at the Frontline with Joe and Joe, he said Donald Trump is granularly pro-life, okay, in the way he really gets into the meat and potatoes of it. DeSantis, I think, is trying to combat that. He's trying to basically appeal to you and me, Joe Rossinello, and all our people here who love us and we love them, who watch us at the Frontline with Joe and Joe, and they like our conversations. I think Ron DeSantis is trying to appeal to us to peel us away from Trump. How did he do that? Well, I'm going to run a clip, okay, and you're going to see exactly what we're talking about when we're going to come down and we're going to break down the conversation. Let me find it right here.
Still unclear when the law will go into effect. Last year, Governor Ron DeSantis signed a 15-week abortion ban that is currently before the Florida Supreme Court, putting this new law on hold.
This law only goes into effect if the Florida Supreme Court upholds the law that we passed last year for 15 weeks. So we have to see what the court does.
Despite the governor's signing of the Heartbeat Protection Act, there's still no date set for its implementation. That's because the law will take effect only if the state's current 15-week ban is upheld in an ongoing legal challenge that is before the state Supreme Court.
Depending on what happens for the 15-week, we just have to wait and see. But we're not going to go away, and we're not going to be quiet about it because, you know, every person that voted for this have voted against women.
Currently.
So let's cut it off there because that woman there is disgusting enough. She's part of she's part of the dishonest political class. I would tell her, you know what, lady? You know who didn't go away for 50 years? Roman Catholics and other people of goodwill that marched in Washington for 50 years while you denied our existence. And that's why Roe versus Wade got overturned. So I'll tell you what, don't go away. But I think you might have learned your lesson from history, woman. We ain't going away either. Now, Ron DeSantis did something, Joe, that I think is good. I said before on the show, this country is never going to be at peace, as Mother Teresa told us. The world will never be at peace as long as we legally allow the deliberate murder of innocent human beings in the world. Are there steps? Is it a process? Unfortunately, it is. Unless Our Lady of Guadalupe comes and straightens this whole thing out like that, it's up to us to keep fighting in one step at a time. Roe versus Wade was a step. Well, now Roe versus Wade belongs to the states, Joe. And Florida just said, guess what? We got a 15-week abortion ban. That's going through the courts. Soon as that's upheld, well, we're going to go to the 6-week. Because guess what? Again, I wish I could say they didn't kill babies in their state, but at least they're making a significant move, particularly relative to where the left is, because they're basically now a baby can be born after a botched abortion and still be killed or not given medical care, which is the same thing. And I got to say, because this topic, this part of the conversation between you and I at the Frontline with Joe and Joe is about DeSantis, he did the right thing.
He did.
You have to give him credit.
100%. But you know what? The thing is, I'm going to go the science route.
Okay.
6 weeks is a heartbeat. You see, it's a heartbeat. and you're extinguishing it. This argument is so weak, the abortion argument. Not to mention, as that woman said, it's against women. Abortions wreck women. Women that have abortions, again, this is not me talking. Do your research. They wreck women. You're not for women. All this is about sex. This is about sex. I do not buy into a monogamous relationship whereby I get married and I stay married for life. I don't. Or I don't want to get married and I want pleasure. And they'll say, well, what's wrong with that? Well, pleasure in eating ice cream, there's nothing wrong with it. But the child is outside of you.
Right.
You're two different entities. Your behavior created a third entity, and you don't have a right to infringe upon it. Sorry.
Right.
And in many of these cases, these abortions are basically ending the life of a child that's viable, meaning if the child is removed from your body, it can live. And you still choose to ignore the science because you are selfish. You are selfish. And that is what it's about. It's not about anything more than that. I want what's mine too damn bad. So this is where language has to be used. People have to stop glossing over the language. This is about me. I want mine too damn bad for you.
Right.
I'll destroy anything in my way that's in the way of me getting mine.
And they've shown that.
And this bleeds into other aspects of our culture. It bleeds into marriages. Look at the statistic of marriages whereby there's an abortion in the marriage. How long the marriage lasts after.
Not very.
This is factual. But nope. Again, ignore the crazy guy who's speaking the truth. I'm telling you the truth.
Yeah, but Joe, let's bring it to a biblical level for a second, okay? But this is the story of now. So let me put it like this: some people may say to Joe and Joe here at the front line with Joe and Joe, Joe, we agree with you guys, Joe's, all right, but this is a story of human history. I mentioned biblical. Look at what happened to the prophets. We're not the prophets speaking the truth. Now, I'm not comparing. Joe and I are not comparing ourselves to Isaiah and Jeremiah or Zechariah, okay, or any of the other prophets, even though we like to think we're probably as vocal as they were. But look at what happened to them, okay? Stoned, thrown off cliffs. Why? Look at what happened for our Catholic people out there. St. Stephen, our Christian people. He told the truth. For that, he got his head crushed with a rock, okay? This is this here. I guess this is not a statement, Joe Rossinello. This is a question that I'm going to throw over to you. Is this not the story of human history? Men, human beings, fall darker and darker and darker and deeper into sin. And those who point out the road to destruction that they're on are the ones that they rail against and they want to destroy. That was my question to you. Is that...
Well, that's what Jesus did. I mean, that's what Gandhi did. And I'm not comparing them on the same level.
I know.
I'm just using them. That's
Sure.
what Abraham Lincoln did. I mean, that's what Martin Luther King did. You push people in a direction. It doesn't matter that they're right or wrong. I'm not doing it. I'm not going there. Yeah, you're right. Good for you. I'm still not doing it. I'm making a choice. Oh, Joe, but we're all going to heaven. Oh, Uncle Bill's in heaven.
Right.
Oh, can't wait to see Johnny. He's in heaven.
Right.
What heaven is that?
I don't know.
I mean, what delusion are you frigging living in? You actually think a just God is okay with that? I mean, this is the delusion of Americanism. Oh, we're all going to heaven.
Oh, no. You hit the nail on the head. Joe, in many ways, our problems are not the left. Our problems are the right, the feckless right. And it's that, and what you just described. Well, well, let's just believe in capitalism. Free markets. God created markets, We'll all say we're pro-life until it comes time to actually ban abortion. And then none of these conservatives will be found anywhere. They'll pass 15-week bans, 6-week bans. Okay, and those are, I guess, a step in the process. None of them have the stones to say, no, we got to ban abortion completely. It's the deliberate murder of an innocent human being. You're exactly right. Here's the thing, Joe. You and I could get happy about certain things in America. We could get angry about certain things in America. But what you just described for our audience and for me is those things that make us nauseated about America. It makes my stomach turn because people who give the lip service to what I speak the truth, but you don't do a damn thing about it.
I wonder what it is, though, Joe. And this is where, to be honest with you, a life without God doesn't make sense, because to live in the truth requires deep sacrifice. And people who are Catholic and Christian accept that, because that is the way to heaven, the true path to heaven. God says this, it's narrow. God says this. Jesus, the guy, Jesus, everybody
The guy who was
talks
raised
about
from
him.
the dead, yeah.
He says, these are not my words. He says, the road to heaven is narrow, and I'm going to finish the sentence, and few find it. Jesus said that, by the way. I didn't. So to live in the truth, I don't want to get overly Catholic. I'm making a point. To live in the truth, whether it's abortion, whether it's being faithful to your wife, whether it's being a good steward with your money, whether it's being a giving person with your time to society, costs you.
Right.
And outside of the Christian edict of life, it makes no sense. If you don't believe in God and heaven, you're an idiot to do those things. But if you do, it makes perfect sense. And why do I bring that up? Society has abandoned that foundation. We live in the most selfish society, maybe in the history of mankind.
Can I address that real quick? I
Please.
think it was Charles Krauthammer when he was still alive. God rest his soul. Charles Krauthammer said basically he was commenting, I believe, at the time, at the young people at CPAC who are basically fist in the air for Ron Paul. All right, the father. And I like Ron Paul. I really do. I love Rand Paul. Okay. He's self-identified libertarian. He's pro-life. That matters to me. Your stance on abortion matters to me. And I think it was Krauthammer who said, yeah, the problem with those young kids is that they've all read Ayn Rand, but they haven't grown up into being conservatives yet. And the reason why I bring this up, Joe, because you mentioned selfishness, okay? Ayn Rand is not a hero for people like us, and we are conservative. We do believe in markets. We believe in limited government. We are on the same page as our libertarian confreres, let's say. But I'm not a Randian. I do not believe in that whatsoever. I believe in a moral boundaries in society, and so do you. Okay, so do many other people out there. The problem, I think, is our culture. On the one hand, you got the radical left, okay, who is complete. They're completely detached from reality. Let's be clear about that. I'll go back to Sam Smith. The dude is completely detached from reality. But on the far right, and I don't like to use the word far right, let's call on the Randian right, Joe, their attitude right now, their worldview, that Randian conservative right-wing worldview, that's what's predominant right now. And I'm telling you, it's going to be something to be, as much as you and I and many other good people out there fight against the left, we have to fight against that too. You want to know why? That is selfishness. Ayn Rand thought that the greatest moral imperative was your own self-interest. Now, again, I don't want to be unfair to Ayn Rand. She didn't leave it there. There's much more. We're not going to get into it tonight. We can have somebody on the front line with Joe and Joe to discuss Ayn Rand. But the Randian worldview seems to have overtaken the conservative movement in America, so that we can't talk about abortion. We can't talk about Sam Smith and his delusion. We can't talk about transgenderism. We can't talk about all these other things, because now the conservative movement has become Randian, which, Joe, let's be clear, Randianism is another form of selfishness. It's what it is. And that's a problem too.
Because again, there is no more right and wrong. Oh, that's your truth.
Oh, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no, wrong. It's not my truth. It's the truth.
Right.
And here's another thing. Try it and see how you do. You see, it's like a father whose 16-year-old kid's about to do something dumb. And you tell him, it's like the prodigal son. You want to take half my money and go act like a jerk? Guess what's going to happen? You're going to fall on your face. I can tell you that before it happens because I've been around the block. Your ideas, once again, I'm going to say it again, they stink. And the byproduct of them says they do. I can tell you right now, and again, I'm basing my ideas on 2,000 years of wisdom. They're not my ideas, by the way. Right. And here's another thing. They work. They do. You don't want to do it. Part of the reason why, because you don't want to sacrifice a damn thing. You don't want to pay the bill, but you want to reap the benefit. Having a successful life isn't an accident. And I'm not talking about money at all.
Right.
If it was, everyone would have it. You don't want to hold yourself accountable.
Right.
You don't want to do the things. This is why our society is what it is. We don't want to do the things that we know are right.
Joe, listen, I had a guy in the restaurant I work with. We were watching the TV a couple weeks ago. I know the guy. He comes in. He's a Republican. I know he's a conservative. He's screaming at the TV saying, why did Carrie Lake back Donald Trump on judges? Because if she wasn't pro-life, she'd be governor right now. Joe, that guy is the Republican Party right now.
Well, they're a mess. Like
because she actually stood for, she's pro-life, and so is Donald Trump. And Trump proved it by giving us judges that are pro-life. And Roe versus Wade is overturned. This is a guy who would call himself a conservative Republican. He's screaming at the TV. Okay, I didn't open my mouth because obviously I work in this restaurant and I don't want to get into that. I kept my mouth shut. But he's screaming at the TV, goes, she should have never got in bed with Trump because she said she was pro-life. The women in Arizona voted for Katie Hobbs. That's the Republican Party right now.
Oh, they're a wreck. Like I said, I mean, Joe, that's why the answer isn't political. The country has lost its way. We don't know what's right and wrong anymore. And again, a good way to gauge it, as opposed to putting it into religious arguments, is you tell a tree by the fruit it bears. Your ideas stink. Sorry. They're not bearing good fruit. Divorce, no-fault divorce, bad idea. It's destroying society.
And it has for a long time.
And I could go down, I could argue them all.
Right.
And to be honest with you, all of them, they stink. They stink.
Well, here's the thing. Some people could be disingenuous, and you and I have seen them in our lives. Let's bring it back to politics for a second at the front line with Joe and Joe. Ron DeSantis, I think, did something fairly bold.
Agreed.
Maybe not as far as we'd like.
No, but it was a big,
but a necessary step. How about let's call it that charitably, a necessary step. Let's get to the point where at the very least we recognize the heartbeat as a demarcation line. After that point, that baby cannot be killed. And there's exceptions. The rape and incest part is in there, and I think the life of the mother, but that's irrelevant because that's never been a case. My point is, Trump has shown himself to be pro-life. I think you say you could judge people by their fruit. Well, I happen to be digging Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, and Amy Coney Barrett. I'm not going to lie to you. I've seen some of their other decisions, and I like them. And obviously, we already admire Alito and Justice Thomas. So I'm happy with Trump about that. Bringing it back over to DeSantis. Whether it's political or not, he did the right thing and he deserves credit for that. I think, Joe. Final comment from you
Oh,
on that.
agreed. I mean, it's a bold move, to be truthful with you. I was actually shocked when I saw it. Um, and to be truthful with you, the abortion argument is a weak argument. It's sadly a weak. Those who are for abortion, it defies your science argument. You don't have a science argument when it
Can I,
comes to abortion.
Joe, can I
Sure.
chime in for a second? I'm sorry, but it's a very important point I'd like to impart because it's something I thought a lot about lately, and I think we've discussed it. I know that we've discussed it in the past at the front line with Joe and Joe. The time for arguments, Joe, is over. The arguments have been made for the last 50 years since Roe versus Wade was ruled upon by the Supreme Court and they usurped the power of the states. Okay, that the arguments have all been won by the pro-life side, whether it's pro-life side, whether it's the moral argument, the legal argument, the constitutional argument, the political argument, states' rights argument, morality argument. All the arguments have been won. The left has let us know that we've won all those arguments. They have also made it clear that now it's a matter of political will. And this is why I cut you off, because I want your opinion on this. I think DeSantis is saying, maybe not listening to Joe and Joe, but on one level saying, yeah, right now, abortion in America, that's a matter of political will. And he's got the will to sign that legislation. I think.
Well, I think it's wonderful. It's a good step. But again, it's about changing hearts. I mean, to take it just in a different direction quickly, the abortion pill. The reason why they're not allowing it is because it's dangerous.
It's unsafe.
They don't care because they don't care about women, Joe. You see, they don't care.
Right.
It's unsafe. If you take that pill and you're too far along, you could die.
Right.
Never mind the child dying. You have a big living thing in you, and you can die.
And Nancy
They
Mace,
don't
who's
care.
made Joe, and Nancy Mace, who's made a hero. This goes back to what we were talking about. She's made a hero by the Republicans. Nancy Mace, here's our message from Joe and Joe. You are no hero, woman. You are. I don't care if you support Donald Trump. I don't care whatever else you support. You're going against a what's supposed to be a central plank in the platform of the conservative movement, which is we are pro-life, and you're mad because the judges said, hold it. And they asked the question that you just did. Is this really safe? But
The answer is no.
And the answer is no until we find out. How about we don't know what the answer is, but until we find out, guess what? You can't get that pill
And
until we find
every
out.
major network never says that because they don't care about women.
That's right.
And you will continue to lie to yourself.
Right. If you want to
America.
see how little the left cares about women, go look at our video that we put on Twitter about Riley Gaines and what she's going through, and you can see how much the left cares about women. They don't care about women, okay? Because if they did, a lot of this nonsense would go away. Nancy Mace, Joe, I want to make one final point because I want one final conversation with you for a few minutes. Nancy Mace is no hero, and all you conservatives out there, don't make her out to be. She's not. She's not our friend, okay? She's not. And she's shown that. She's shown that several times in the past. So don't drink her Kool-Aid, whatever you do. You're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe, let me tell you something. I'm getting tired. I'm getting real tired, number one, of Catholics. You and I are not the type to cry Catholic persecution, but we do point out on this show, and we've had guests on our Veritas show that have pointed out the persecution of Catholics throughout the world. It's real. It's a reality. Okay, not just Catholics, other Christians too, but Catholics in particular are a persecuted group, whether they're being beheaded, whether they're being stoned, or whether they're being shunned in society. We are a persecuted group, okay? And on one hand, you have those who don't recognize the fact that Catholics are persecuted, and then you have the persecutors, and then you have those who want to attack the Catholic Church in the culture and in society, and those in the government who don't do anything about it. Well, let's take a look at this, and then we're going to come right back. All right, so let's bring it back. That video goes on for a couple minutes. It talks about now, by the way, for all of you who are watching that, that is a Catholic church that's being attacked by a boy who thinks he's a girl and does not like the fact that the Catholic Church teaches that that is a disorder and is something that we need to deal with on a psychological level. I think if you look at that particular boy, he's got a little bit more anger, Joe, than I would call just psychological anger. He seems to be motivated maybe by a little bit more of a darker force. But nonetheless, here's my point, is that you see that. Joe, I'm going to be a little controversial. What if you and I decided, okay, we were going to take a bunch of bricks, okay? Everybody knows I'm in Arizona, but let's say I was with you in New Jersey, and we were going to go down to the local mosque or the local synagogue, and you and I decided we were going to do what that young boy just did. Do you think that Merrick Garland would come after you? Because I certainly think he would come after
Well,
me.
that's a fact. I mean, Joe, I'm glad you brought that up, but at the same time, because that was what I was going to say. The double standard is so evident. Like no one cares. Like that is so true. By the way, he should be charged with a hate crime. That is a hate crime. What he just did is a hate crime. Here's the deal: not enough Catholics care, and not enough Americans care.
You're right.
Every American should be disturbed by what you just saw, whether you're Catholic or not. Just as I'm disturbed if someone did that to a temple or a mosque, and I'm not Jewish nor am I Muslim, because you have a right to be in this country. And I'm going to call you all out. If you're not disturbed, you're not American. If you're not disturbed, you're part of the problem. Whether you're Catholic, whether you're Jewish, whether you're Muslim, whether you're agnostic, or whether you're an atheist, you're part of the problem.
Right.
That should be disturbing
Well,
to
if you and I, let me take it away out of religion for a second. Well, maybe it would still be religion, but let's take it away from Muslims and Jews. Let's say we went down to the local chapter of the Freedom from Religion Foundation in America. I think that's Mikey Weinstein's organization. He's a vocal, nauseating atheist. And we went and broke their windows. You think Mikey Weinstein would like that?
No one has a right to do that to anyone, irregardless of what you believe. And when it comes to a religion, which Catholicism is, that is a hate crime.
That's right.
You don't have to go to law school to know it. He should be prosecuted, and no one cares. And that is why the country is the way it is, because no one cares. We have abandoned common sense. We have abandoned the rule of law, and we now are driven by the mob, most of which can't put logical and linear thoughts together and see the bad fruit of their choices because they don't want to, because they don't want to change. And that's why America is the way it is. That's why America is not going to get better.
Joe, I want to finish the conversation with this, okay? Getting just a little bit biblical for a second. Please bear with us. The prodigal son, when he went, you mentioned the prodigal son earlier, and everybody knows the story of the prodigal son, okay? And I'm not preaching at you now. The prodigal son was an individual young man who went to his father and asked for half of his wealth because he wanted to basically, what did he want to do, Joe? He wanted to go out and live the sex, drugs, and rock and roll lifestyle. The primitive, the ancient version of that, okay, in Jesus' story. But nonetheless, that's what he wanted, Joe. He wanted to go out and party. The problem is America has been to the party now for a very long time. So has the rest of the world, by the way. So has Europe, okay? When you look at England, came to the point, Joe, of extinction in 1945. 15 years later, they're dancing like nothing ever happened, okay? Sexually liberated, the whole 9 yards, all of Europe, America, okay? So that's what the prodigal son wanted. He wanted to go out there. He wanted to go, Father, don't put handcuffs on me. Joe, don't we hear that now? Don't put restrictions on me. I got to be free. I got to be me. What does the father do? He gives him half his wealth. Go ahead, son. All right? My point is this. The story pertains to the young man, but it pertains to societies too. And I'm going to throw it over to you for a final comment. Societies have to come to the end of themselves too, Joe. Just like the prodigal son was feeding the pigs and came to the end of himself. No more money, no more women, no more wine. Okay? You're feeding pigs, young man. You brought it on yourself. And your only choice is to go back to your father. Society has to do the same thing because it's not just a lesson for the individual. It's a lesson for our entire country. That's where we're at right now. But Joe, the problem is, and I'm going to hand it to you, we're not feeding the pigs yet in America. Maybe that's where we have to get to.
Oh, it's going to get worse. There's no question about it. But ultimately, I believe what will pull people out of it is people have to adhere to first principles. And out of the corner of the eye of some people who find themselves in a very dark place, we'll see a group of people living in joy, fruitful families, and thriving, not because they're smarter, because they made better decisions. And maybe then they will come out of the pigsty. But until then, people still are digging the pods of the pig. And ultimately, to your point, it's going to get worse, Joe. It's gotten worse even in the last 10 years, and it's progressively going to get worse. And as it gets worse, again, what people have to do is stay the course. First principles, God, family, country. Ultimately, the difference between the two sets is going to become so glaring. It already is. And maybe that will pull some people out of the mess that you have gotten yourself into.
Right.
Never mind the country. And here's another thing. It's never too late. It's never too late to turn around. It's never too late to say, you know something? That decision was a bad one. It's never too late.
Right.
You just have to have a little bit of honesty, self-honesty, and say, you know something? I'm going to put the brakes on and pull and change. You do that, I got news for you. The sky's the limit. It's up to you.
That's right. That's right. Joe Rossinello. And listen, we'll be the guys grabbing that prodigal son by the scruff of his neck, try to keep him out of the pig pen. Because guess what? Joe and I, in our lifetimes, at one point or another, we were the guys feeding the pigs. Okay. We went back to the father. That's what America needs to do. You want your politics to change. You want your culture to change. All right. Let's get back, like Joe said, let's get back to first principles. You guys are awesome. You support Joe and I. We never ask you for money. We ask you for a click here, a click there. YouTube, Frontline TV. Click us over there, subscribe, like, all that fun stuff. Please, on Twitter, really building it up over there, and really trying to @with Joe and Joe on Twitter. And every place else you see us. We're on Rumble. We're all over the place, okay? So we'd ask you that wherever you do see us, please help us out. You guys are great. Like I said, you always support us. Stay tuned. A lot of great videos coming out this week from both Joe and myself. Joe's focusing more on YouTube. I'm focusing more on Twitter. But we will meet in the middle so you can see us on both. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.